So good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining. My name is Vishnu Dutt, and I work in enterprise team here in Cisco, customer experience. So to begin with, basically, we are going to have 5 or 6 sessions to learn this cloud networking from scratch, right? So first of all, you may be wondering, why do we need to learn cloud networking? We are already networking experts, right? But believe me, this skill is going to be really, really important in upcoming future. In fact, I can feel the heat now. If you consider several of my customers, they have already moved to cloud or planning to move into the cloud. And when I say they are planning to move into cloud, which means that they are literally shifting their workloads or servers, VMs into the cloud. And when they shift their workload into the cloud, that means they want connectivity back from the remote branches or their data centers and whatnot. So if you do not feel comfortable how you can connect your enterprise to cloud, or even if you are not comfortable how cloud networking looks, right? Then basically it's going to be a problem in coming future. So I really want to make set expectation out of these sessions is, we are not going to learn cloud and its services, right? That is not the agenda of this this training. The agenda is, we will look cloud from networking perspective. What are the various networking constructs inside the cloud? And believe me, the networking in cloud is very simple. If you compare it with 3 levels of certification like CCNA, CCNP, and CCI, the networking in cloud is just a CCNA level. But the problem is, because there are multiple vendors, there are multiple cloud providers, they use their own terminology, right? For example, AWS use something else for the same networking construct, which is used in different manner in Azure or GCP or the Google Cloud platform. And that is where it becomes complicated, right? Same concept, whatever we have read in the CCNA or in the networking world, but we do not understand because the term is different, and those terms make sense in the cloud, but they do not make sense when we learned our CCNA level, right? So having said that, we will be seeing cloud from networking perspective. We will really go into the detail of cloud networking, what are the various constructs and all. But for this session, for the first session, I want to make it very basic, right? For example, I'm not sure about your background, but I presume that if there are more than 150 people right now in this call, right, they have different kind of experience. Some know virtualization, some do not know. And that's okay, that's perfectly fine. But as virtualization, and there are some concepts which are really, really important in understanding of the cloud networking. To make everyone on the same page, we will be discussing the very basics of cloud first, especially in the area of computing, virtualization, because that is the basic, that is the key, right? Everyone should be on the same page to understand the in-depth topics which we are going to cover as a part of next few sessions, right? So what is the agenda of today's session? First thing first means, if you need to understand anything, we need to understand why behind it, right? And that is why basically we are going to discuss. We will spend good time here with respect to why we need actually cloud, right? Brief history of cloud. Previously, what was the model on which we were working, and then what got changed. And I could see a hand raise here, but believe me, guys, because the audience is a little big here, so I do not want to be derailed. And we will take your questions. We will take your questions just after this. So I will be here for 15-20 minutes after 3 o'clock also to answer only your questions, right? But if you have any specific problem, then you can just reach out to the moderator here, Punish Makhija, or just type your questions, and I will be picking up one by one during this session or after this session. So we were just discussing that agenda. So we will be spend quite some time that what was the model we were working before the cloud, and believe me, that was working fine. But now, if there is a service which could be used more efficiently, then why not to move towards it, right? And that is how basically cloud changed the entire data center model which we were using previously. The second thing is, if we are really going deeper into cloud networking, we need to understand this part. Wait a minute. Let me bring the, okay. We need to understand this part, which is your infrastructure as a service. So there are various services offered by the cloud, like platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, and software as a service, right? But for our discussion, we would really like to go deeper into this, because if this thing is clear to you, infrastructure as a service, then you can really understand why we are doing all these sessions, right? Why do we need understanding of networking in the cloud? Because this is the main piece. So first we will discuss why cloud, brief history about it, then infrastructure as a service, and at last, why cloud networking, right? So all things are interrelated, by the way. So having said that, let's move to our first board, where we are going to discuss slightly brief history of cloud and what was the model before cloud. So consider this diagram. So here I have a data center, a DC, for an organization. Maybe it could be anything like XYZ organization, right? And here, if you can see that we have several users with their laptop, and we have servers here also. And the model was very simple, right? Now, whatever the application we want to run, we used to run that in servers. And then basically these guys are consuming the services of whatever you are. So basically, if you can see here that we were able to have so many servers like file server, web server, email server, and we were happily using them, right? So if I give you an example, generally what used to happen when I joined when I joined this organization, that we have a large file server, right? Suppose this was a server, and we had our own shared spaces there, right? For example, this user has his shared space of file or basically storage, which is A and B and C. And then there is a common storage space also, where if this guy wants to share anything with this guy, he wants to place that in the common storage, and then basically the other guy will go and fetch it, right? But there was some inherent problems with respect to this model, right? And those problems I have specifically mentioned here, right? The first thing is management and operational cost. What is the meaning of that? It means that if I talk about on-prem data center, it means that this complete data center was your responsibility. It was owned by you. It was under your premises, right? So it is your responsibility to buy all these servers and then to manage them, right? And then basically, obviously, you need to take a backup of all these things and whatnot. So management and operational cost was there. Obviously, if you are maintaining this data center, you are spending money, right? The second thing is, which is really important, is advanced planning, because you do not know how many users are you going to have in future, right? Maybe 100, maybe 200, you do not know. So that's why you do not know how many servers you want to purchase, right? And that requires a lot of advanced planning, which could go wrong. And that's why people were procuring or purchasing these hardware devices like anything. And believe me, at some point of time, you believe that we purchase more and we are not using the full capacity. And if we are not using the full capacity, it means that eventually it is loss in the business, right? And it was happening all the times. We were used to purchase a lot of devices, but we were not using them. So that is the second thing, which is basically you need advanced planning. The third thing is time to deploy a new service. Suppose you want to deploy a new web server, right? And the request come to you today, right now. So what are the various things which you want to do? And you do not have new hardware to deploy that. Then first thing first, you go and purchase that hardware, which is going to take between 2 to 4 weeks, right? So 2 to 4 weeks in just purchasing the hardware. Then second thing, you need to install whatever the servers or whatever you want to install, the backup things and everything, and then you want to test it, right? This is going to take again 1 or 1.5 months once again. So basically, overall, if you consider to deploy a new service, to deploy a new web server, right? It was going to take approximately something between 2 to 3 months. And when everything goes fine, when everything goes with respect to your planning. But if something goes here with respect to procurement or all, then basically the time is further delayed. So whenever in old model, in all old on-prem data center, if you want to manage or if you want to deploy a new service, that was really, really difficult, right? And was a time-consuming process. Not difficult, my bad. Not difficult, but it was a time-consuming process. Okay. The other thing is, it is not like that you just need to maintain the servers and users, because these servers should be part of your networking infrastructure also. It means that you need to purchase those routers, you need to purchase those switches also, correct? And then most of the security practices or security related things are already should be there in data center. So you need to buy firewall. And if your particular application is doing really great, or the web server is doing really great, and hundreds or thousands of users are connected to that web server, then you need to consider some more services like load balancer. You do not want to load a single server. Okay, so suppose you have these two web servers, right, which are hosting the same site. So you want that some requests should come here and some requests should come here. So that's why you place load balancers here, right? And if you are placing load balancer, then it means that you are purchasing some more things, right? So management, operational cost, time to deploy new services, advanced planning of buying this hardware, and then basically there is no single pane of glass. For example, to firewall, you have a different management plane, or the different UI to manage your firewalls, then routers, switches, and whatnot. Although we are solving this problem with new solutions like ACI, DNAC, but still, I could see that still I feel that there is no single pane of glass. So what is the solution? What we are doing to prevent all this? And believe me, there are some organizations even right now who are in this model, right? Because they do not know the power of cloud, or basically they haven't have knowledge about them. So let's check what has changed now. So these are the problems associated with data centers. And now, and by the way, guys, we are just discussing here why cloud. So first, I mentioned you what are the problems we are facing in current data centers. Then we will talk about how the cloud is solving them. Okay. So here is the next board. So now we are introducing a new construct here, or new solution here, which I have shown in this blue color, which is a cloud, right? Consider this for means it's not dependent on any provider, but just consider that this is a cloud which is offering you some services. Now somebody is coming to you, to your enterprise, and they are saying that you do not need to maintain these servers, right? You just you do not need to buy this hardware. Do not worry about it. I have a lot of capacity. I have a lot of hardware space. What you can do is, whatever application you were running, like your file, your web server or something, you can run everything in cloud or in my infrastructure, on my infrastructure, whatever I have, right? You just need to create a virtual machine, because I can give you whatever you need. And by the way, we will be discussing about virtual machines and then that virtualization and all. But for now, you need to understand whatever you were doing here, you can do that the exact thing here, but not. So if you want to install web server, you do not need to purchase your hardware, right? Hardware is already there. There is a plenty of hardware. They have complete data centers there, which are full of this hardware, and you just need to create your own applications or virtual machines there, which are hosting all these services. Now, it is not your responsibility to manage or procure these hardware. It is the responsibility of cloud service provider. What you are doing is you are just moving all of your workloads or all of your application from your data center into the cloud, right? Once you have moved then basically still you will be having your branches or campus here as a part of your organization. You need to connect to this cloud, and that's why I mentioned here that the cloud is connected to internet, and there are some other options which we are going to deeply understand as a part of this series, because this is important. How this cloud can be connected to your organization apart from internet. Cloud is already there on internet. No way. It means it is very easy to consume the services over internet. But yes, if you want to consume that fast, if you want to make sure that basically these services doesn't have any delay, jitter, loss, or whatever you want, then basically there should be some other mechanism, because you cannot predict the internet path, and that's why we have other constructs in cloud networking, which specifically says that how you can connect your cloud to your on-prem data center or to your branches, and we will be discussing that in detail as a part of this series. So overall, if I could see the benefit, the first benefit is pay as you grow model. You do not need to plan everything in advance. Why I'm saying this? Because suppose previously you were using this file server in your premises. You haven't moved this file server to the cloud. What happened when these 3 users become 300 users? Then eventually you will be losing the space in this file server. And now to make sure that everything is working fine here, you will be purchasing more hardware, right? But this is not the case with the cloud. If previously you have chosen a 1 terabyte of space, right? 1 terabyte of space, but now you are basically saying that I do not need 1 terabyte now, I need 5 terabyte now, because my user base has significantly improved now. So if you are doing that, it means it is the responsibility of cloud service provider to just change your virtual machine from 1 terabyte to 5 terabyte. And the important thing is you do not need to switch off your server at any point of time, right? All are dynamic, everything is dynamic. In fact, you can increase the memory. In fact, you can increase the number of CPUs just depending on your workload. For example, I mean, sometimes if your organization is a online retailer, then during the period of Christmas or during the period of Diwali, right? We saw a huge number of traffic which is meeting or which is going into the servers of this data center, right? Or basically, if you have moved this web server into the cloud, then basically you can see a lot of traffic which is going into this web server. Then during that point of time, you can say that during the period of Diwali or before 5 days, after 5 days, what I want to do is I just want to increase the memory, hard disk, and so whatever the parameters you like. And it is the responsibility of the cloud provider, or basically, if it is the infrastructure as a service which you managing, you can just go ahead and increase the necessary things like their hard disk from 1 terabyte to 5 terabyte. You can do that. Or you can automate all these things using APIs. That if basically we are reaching the time approximately means we are reaching the time to Diwali, then after all those 10 days, I want to have a virtual machine which is high-end virtual machines, or you can say which is having these specific parameters in terms of CPU, memory, or RAM. So pay as you grow. Obviously, if you are opting for a high-end machine, then you need to pay more, right? But you do not need to pay more throughout the year or throughout the life cycle. because you are opting that only for few days. But you cannot do that, those things when you were on-prem, right? You cannot say that I can buy a server only for 5 or 10 days, right? You need to buy that server. So that is where basically this pay-as-you-grow model is really effective when we consider cloud. The second thing is faster deployment. This is again very important. Previously, we could see that to deploy a new service, the time frame was 2 to 3 months if everything goes as planned, right? But this is not the case with the cloud, right? So when we were discussing agenda, we were talking about this thing that yes, we need to understand infrastructure as a service, right? Because the complete networking thing which we are going to discuss here is going to be around here. You are building your own infrastructure into the cloud, and that's where you need networking there, right? So what is the meaning of building your own infrastructure into the cloud? To understand that, we need to understand first how a typical server look in our organization. Means if as I mentioned that we have a lot of servers placed in our data center. So we are just looking inside a particular server, that how exactly it looks, and then we will compare it with what happened to the server when virtualization comes. And this concept means I know most of you who are from virtualization background, this is just very simple, but I really want everybody to be on the same page, because this is important if we are considering understanding cloud networking. So first thing first, if you see the left-hand diagram, here one, we have a legacy server here, this one. Okay, and what is there? As a part of this server, I could see that there is a block which says that we have hardware. As a part of hardware, we can see we have network interface card, we have hard disk drive, and then basically we have CPU and memory. Correct? So this was kind of the hardware, and what we used to do over it is we install Windows or Linux or any operating system over it, right? Once it is done, then we install app here. For example, if I want to run a web server, I run a web server here, right? And then if I want to run a DHCP or DNS, I can run here easily, which is very simple, right? So this was the old model, and if anybody wants to connect to this server, obviously from outside, we want to connect it through via NIC, where we connect our Ethernet cable, right? So this was the, and because this is a server device, so we can have more than one network interface card, we can have even more hard disk space, and then CPU and memory, right? Whatever you want. But we need to build it first. We need to define. So if I want a server, I go to the dealer, I tell him that I want this CPU, this memory, this hard disk space, and can you build that server for me? So they will specifically build that server for you, and then you install your operating system on top of it, and then run application. So that was the simple thing which we were facing. But consider a requirement here. What I want is, now suppose this server was running as a web server, right? And previously when I bought this server, my organization was small, and it is having a limited capacity. So it used to be only 1,000 people were coming here to connect onto this virtual machine, or sorry, into this Windows machine, right? Or the web server. The problem is now, as my company grows, what I would like to do is that from these 1,000 connections, it may be the connection can increase to maybe 5,000 or 10,000, right? So what do I need? I need to introduce CPU memory, maybe sometimes the speed of this NIC. And basically, I cannot do that without a downtime. I will be shutting down this server and then changing, and then hope for the best that the Windows or the Linux operating system will find the new hardware compatible and everything works fine, right? So this was the thing which we were doing previously. But now with the invent of this virtualization technology, what we are doing here is we had a same hardware model, right? We had a same hardware model like network interface card, hard disk drive, and CPU memory, right? Now, instead of running Windows over it, I am running some hypervisor, right? Hypervisor responsibility is to abstract your hardware and present it to some different form to upper layers, right? And what exactly it is doing in right now, if you can see that I am still running Windows. Suppose this is my window machine, but now it is not the I don't say it's a physical machine, it's a virtual machine, because you can see that I can run a Linux machine as well as Windows machine on the same platform, on the same server, right? And how it is possible to do that, because I am not installing this Windows Linux 1 operating system, but I am installing a hypervisor over it, which basically abstract your hardware to the operating system. So right now, this Windows machine will be seeing its own hardware like memory, NIC, hard disk space, and CPU, right? So whose responsibility is to present this hardware to Windows? This is the responsibility of this hypervisor. So maybe you can have only one NIC here or one NIC, network interface card, but still in the virtual machine, in the Linux virtual machine, if you go and check that you have one NIC here, you have one NIC here, right? But eventually at the physical level, it is only one. So it is the responsibility of the this guy, hypervisor, to take traffic of this NIC, and bridge it towards the NIC, which is the final NIC, right? So this is very basic example that right now we do not need to build to run only one operating system on a machine. So if I have a powerful machine here, and that doesn't also mean that I am increasing my CPU or memory. CPU and memory is intact, whatever the hardware I purchased for. For example, if I am having 8 GB of RAM, I can assign 4 GB here, I can assign 4 GB here, which was pretty simple to use. And this is the responsibility of this hypervisor to allocate all these things to the operating system, because now it is working as a brain, right? So different vendors, different hypervisor, but most widely used is the ESXi, and I'm not sure KVM also. So ESXi is developed by this organization, VMware, right? And it is widely used. So I believe the data center guys have already heard about ESXi, vSphere, and whatnot. But what exactly it is doing, they are just virtualizing your hardware, right? The important thing is now you can have these virtual machines, right? And the important property of this virtual machine is you can export them. You can just take this virtual machine out and you can run that on any hardware platform if it is supported by them, right? So it doesn't matter that you need to, so suppose you want to so suppose this is another server, server X, and what you did is you just export all this virtual machine, VM, Windows and VM Linux to here. It is empty now. Everyone is happy accessing all those VMs here on this server. Now, now if you want to increase your CPU and memory, you can increase here, right? Because virtual machines are not running. You can switch off this server. You can upload. You can change CPU, memory, hard disk, or NIC, whatever you want. Once it is done, you can bring these virtual machines back here. That was not the case when you were having everything on the same hardware. So this is the power of virtualization, and that is where basically most of the things in the cloud or basically in your private cloud is possible. So if something goes wrong with respect to virtual machine, you can spin up a new virtual machine in totally different hardware, and people who were coming to you, they just can go there and access that virtual machine there, and that is dynamic process. So there are many things which you cannot do with respect to physical server, which you can now with the use of this virtualization, right? So understanding this concept is really important, because when we go a little bit deeper into the cloud networking part, here basically where most of the people get confused, right? But if you have very solid understanding, or if you have questions, just now, and I would be happy to answer before going further. So Punish, having said that, do we have any question now?
Hello, Vishnu?
Yeah.
Vishnu, you're breaking again. Hello?
Do you...
now better. Now it's better. Much
Okay. So do you see any question here? So is it happening for everybody, or means you were able to listen listen
Yes,
to me
yes.
when I was
Correct,
explaining?
correct. It
Okay.
was just for like 10 seconds, 5 to 10
Oh, that is
seconds.
good.
That's it.
That is good. So do you see any? Okay.
Yes,
Yes, everyone
we
is
have.
saying Anjali Thomas. So 10 seconds. Okay. So if you can just give me some questions if
Yeah,
anybody asks.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's what kind of virtualization used by Docker?
Yeah. So Docker and container is totally different thing than this. Right now, if you can see that I need to install this window, right, and Linux, or suppose we are running 5 virtual machines here, which is Windows virtual machines, right? I need to install Windows operating system 5 times on this virtual machine, which I see is a redundant thing. So what they are doing as a container or
Container.
Docker. Okay, so we were discussing when Docker how actually it is working. So I do not want to really deeper into that. We can sync up offline. But yes, if I want to run 5 virtual machines, which is having Windows, really I need to install 5 times Windows operating system, which I see as a redundant thing, right? I should install on, Windows only once, and then basically I run my applications, which should be independent of each other, and that application which is independent of each other is nothing but the container or Docker, right? So that is more efficient than even virtual machines. So, but we can discuss maybe after this call or something. Punish, do we have other questions?
Yep, yep. So it's from Shrikant. Is any account from Cisco that we can use to practice and deploy workloads in cloud?
Yes, basically that's why basically we will be developing the lab also. Even Cisco has cloud forms, which gives you kind of same feeling that you are deploying your workloads in the cloud, because Cisco has its own cloud, right? So uh, but yes, even if you want to create your own account in Amazon Web Service, they have free tier, which we will be using in this sessions, and we will be creating multiple workloads or virtual machines there into the AWS or GCP, so that we understand the networking, how we can do the networking amongst them. So that is part of this session. Yes, correct. Anything else, Punish?
We have few more. So it's from Akshata. Is this model of having sensitive data on-prem and rest of the cloud service
People are using that. You are right. So we will take other questions after some time. Let's move towards a new board. Okay. So if you see this diagram, now the question is how these virtual machines talk outside. It's very simple. Uh, Eventually, we will be having a physical NIC card, right? Here, and here is the ESX server, who is, or the hypervisor, who is streaming into this NIC from different virtual machines. I am saying that if you have only one NIC, there's still possibility that you can run many virtual machines, and your networking requirements will be fulfilled. But yes, of course, this is going to be the bottleneck. You can assign your IP address here, and then connect this through Ethernet cable through a switch, then the router and the internet. So basically, this whatever the resources you are trying to access over internet can be easily accessed in this manner, like this, and this one, right? So this board was very simple, but this is again important to understand, because when we say we have a server in cloud, the meaning of that we have a virtual machine in the cloud. This is the virtual machine, right? Which is running on cloud service provider hardware. So this is not our responsibility. It is the responsibility of cloud service provider, that which hypervisor it is opting to, right? What NIC hard disk or how many space. You just need to tell them that I need a machine who is having 32 GB of RAM, then maybe 256 GB of hard disk, right? And then I need 2 NICs in that. You just need to specify all these things. And of course, the networking parameters, which we are going to discuss, that which VPC you would like to be part of, right? What do you want to connect to internet via internet gateway on your own, or basically you want us to define? So there are some, although there are defaults, but that is the main thing which we are going to discuss. So if you want to have your own virtual machine inside a cloud, you need to specify all these things, right? And then the networking parameters also into the cloud, that yes, I want this virtual machine into this region, this availability zone, this VPC. And what I am saying, it's possible that it is not making sense to you, these terms, but we will be discussing these terms. And that is the whole sole agenda of these sessions, that you should be aware of all these terms so that you can do your networking, and then eventually you can connect back your virtual private cloud, which you have deployed in a particular cloud vendor, to connect back to your enterprise. So that is the whole sole agenda of these sessions. So I believe that this board is also making sense. Now let's move to this thing, how infrastructure as a service looks, right? So I have drawn this cloud here. So this is the big cloud, irrespective of the fact that whether it belongs to AWS, Azure, or GCP. The things are simple here. Irrespective of the cloud service provider, they have a solid base of servers, right? And they call it data center. These data centers are huge. So so basically, you can find these data centers in Bombay, in Ireland. If you are talking about AWS in Australia, so they have come up with their own data centers. And if I say data center, it means that they have huge capacity in terms of these servers on where they are running this hypervisor. I'm not sure which one every service provider is running, but yes, they are running some abstraction layer over it. So you do not see them, right? You do not see the hardware of the service provider. You do not see how the networking they have done amongst them. Maybe they could have been using MPLS, EVPN, or whatnot, VXLAN. But we do not know what service provider is using what. Maybe GCP is using something different. Azure is using something different. But you do not need to know that. You just need to know that yes, there is a pool of servers, right? There are unlimited storage, there is unlimited memory, unlimited CPU, which you can create out of which you can create your own virtual machine. So that's why I put this abstraction layer here, that because cloud service provider abstracts all this information from you, and because you do not need to know that. And the guys who are working in these companies, they are maintaining this infrastructure, and along with that, basically they are providing you these services. And one such service is infrastructure as a service, which means now instead of running your web server, your file server on your own premises or on your own data center, you have decided to move, or you have decided to create your virtual machines into the cloud, which are doing the same thing. For example, I would like to give you an example from Netflix, and most of us know this service, right? We are effectively using it. And believe me, whatever these guys are running, right? Whatever you see, whatever the storage, everything is running on AWS cloud. The entire Netflix data center, or you can say the entire Netflix thing is in AWS. So, but if I say that entire Netflix thing is in AWS, it means that whatever the application they are running, the Netflix, right? They are running it inside AWS in the form of virtual machines. So it means that they have run or spin these virtual machines, and these are huge virtual machines, and which are eventually running on these hardware, right? Similarly, Facebook is entirely running on the AWS, and then ESPN also. So Netflix is one of the biggest customer of AWS in terms of the amount they charge, which means that infrastructure-wise, Netflix is using way up resources than Facebook or ESPN, right? If I say they are using way much resources, which means that they are using this server space quite effectively, right? And how they are using it, because they do not have control over these servers, they are creating their own virtual machines, and this special virtual machine or specific virtual machine is having the specific requirement, like I want 256 GB of RAM or something, or maybe 1 terabyte of RAM. I'm not talking about the hard disk. So these are the capabilities of, you can say, cloud service providers. So if I say you are using infrastructure as a service, it means that you are running your own servers in the form of virtual machine into the cloud, right? But now the question is that that's perfectly fine. Means I am running my virtual machines into the cloud. That's perfectly fine. But do I need networking, or it's a responsibility of cloud? Cloud responsibility is this one, right? Below the abstraction layer. It's your own responsibility to create the networking into the VM. Although there are some defaults already available that you do not need to create your own network because there is a default. But you need to understand, because if you want to deviate from the default, you need to understand the thorough networking behind it, right? And that is the whole sole purpose. So previously, if I show you this diagram here, once again, let me, yeah, this diagram here, right? Purchasing routers and then switches was your responsibility, right? Because you were whole sole responsible for creating the networking. But in cloud, now basically you do not need to do that. It is the cloud service provider responsibility. They have everything in virtual format. So they have router in virtual format. They have switches in virtual format. If you want a firewall, they have that thing is in virtual format. So you just need to spin another instance, and it is up and running like anything, right? So now I think by now you understand that we need networking in cloud, because if we are shifting our workloads, if we are shifting our virtual machines, then we need to create those. For example, I want these 3 virtual machines to be in same network, the Facebook virtual machines, right? I need to create a VLAN there and then put them. And then basically I want some security policies so that no one can access these VM, or only some specific person can access that virtual machine. Then basically you need to deploy some firewall also, right? Or basically if you say that I have these 5 virtual machines here in the Facebook region, and they are offering only a service which is web server. I want a load balancer inside here. So there is a construct for that also. Basically you spin the load balancer here, and then basically you do not need to purchase anything. Everything is there already. But you need to understand that you need load balancer, you need internet gateway, you need NAT gateway, or whatnot. So we are going to discuss all these things, right? So why learn cloud networking? And the answer is to create your own virtual networks inside the cloud. This is very, very important. If you are creating your own virtual network, which you will be when you are deploying your virtual machines there, then it is really, really important to understand the need of networking. And then once you have created this network, you need to connect this network back to your enterprise, right? And what are some technologies behind it? We will be covering that. The second thing is internet and NAT router, which I have explained you. For example, this VM wants to go out and talk to internet, then you need to create your internet gateway here, which is again the construct or service provided by the cloud service provider, which is eventually connected to the physical interface somewhere here. And then you can go out and meet that. Then basically, of course, the enterprise connectivity. Once you have done all these things, you need to connect your private network in the cloud to your enterprise. And there are many, many options. Like that is where basically my last nerd lunch came into picture, that how you can connect your enterprise to the cloud, which you have, to the private cloud, which you have created inside the public one, right? And one thing which I forgot to mention you, that the cloud is open for everyone. If you can see that we have this different customer here, Facebook, ESPN, Netflix, and one resource of one customer should not be open to other customers, right? And that is why, that is how, and believe me, all these VMs, it is possible that the ESPN VM is running on the same server as the Netflix VM, but still we are getting that isolation, and it is the responsibility of, again, service providers. How they have done it, it is really interesting to know this part also. But maybe some other times we can, maybe some other series we can discuss this, because this is again very important or to understand. But for now, for our enterprise connectivity, then basically this is good if we understand our private cloud, then how to connect that cloud back to our enterprise. So with that, I would like to take some more questions, and that is why. So Punish, do we have any other questions?
Yeah. Yes, we have. Yeah. So it's how is the upgrade of hardware taken care of without downtime of app in cloud?
Yeah, so basically, as I mentioned, that these are the virtual machines, right? You can shift this VM from one server to another server, but because this is not your responsibility, this is the responsibility of cloud service provider. And how they are doing this? Because at the end of the day, this virtual machine, right? This virtual machine is running into any of these servers, right? Now, the important property of this virtual machine is that it can be shifted from this place to here, right? There are multiple options to do that. You can shift from this place to here. If you want to increase the hardware parameters of this server, you can increase it here, then move it back here if you want. But if you are considering, if I want to increase the VM from 8 GB to 16 GB, you can do it your own, because this infrastructure you cannot control. This is the responsibility of service provider to upgrade the hardware. And how they do it is basically there are several mechanisms. That's why I told you that this part of networking, this part of understanding these servers are really interesting. But we can have a discussion on that in some other series from scratch. Okay, maybe cloud abstraction layer from scratch, maybe some other day. But for now, you can do it easily. Yeah, Punish, any other question?
Yeah, so it's from Gaurav. It's one NIC can have only one IP address. Correct?
Yeah. But yes, we can do always NAT, right? Or we can also bridge the connection. We cannot. It is possible that if you do not want to give this NIC an IP address, what you can make is you can make this NIC as a bridge, and whoever is connected to it can have IP address and talk to it. So one NIC can be used to connect multiple things. So that's why basically there are several modes there: bridge mode, NAT mode, right? If you make this card as a NIC, as a bridge mode, then basically multiple virtual machine can talk over the same card in both direction also. This is important. This is actually beautiful. Yeah. So you need to understand NAT mode, bridge mode, which is slightly towards server side of the things. Yeah, Punish, any other question?
So it's where is networking happening? That's routing, switching, MPLS.
Pardon? Actually, I didn't get that.
Where exactly networking is happening? Routing, switching, MPLS.
Inside here, actually, that's a total different point, which is not part of these sessions. But yes, we can connect offline of this. But yes, there's a huge thing, and that is why basically Amazon, AWS, and GCP, basically they are doing this networking with using a lot of technologies, VXLAN, and I have heard that Google has its own protocol, or basically they are using OpenFlow to do this, to do the same thing.
That's from Kapil. Will there be any demo as well of these concepts?
Yes, there is going to be demo, and I will be choosing AWS primarily for that, Kapil. And we will be creating our own virtual private network there, and then we'll place some virtual machines, and then we'll ping them, and then run some servers or whatever. Means there is going to be demo in subsequent series. So guys, just to let you know, this is only the first session of this series. The remaining 5 sessions are still at the same time, same place, same training, same password. We are going to meet every day. this week, and then Monday next week. Any other question, Punish?
Yep, yeah, we have. So, and yeah, it's from Akshata. Does AWS also provide services with the 3 points like create own VM, internet, and net router,
Mm-hmm.
internet connectivity, or FB or like Facebook needs to do it on its own?
It is basically there are two types of services. Sometimes they say that, and that is where basically different vendors comes into picture. They say we will maintain your network into the cloud, right? So Facebook has a complete network. It's a big network in the cloud, and somebody is managing that for sure.
And this from Divya, this who will maintain the VM network?
Basically, there are some default construct also. Means if you don't do anything, things will work fine. But if you do things your own way, if you want to them, then basically you will be the whole soul in charge of your network in the cloud also. That suppose if you want that these two virtual machines should be part of one VLAN, you need to do that.
So, it's from Sandeep. So the bandwidth requirement between DC to cloud provider has to be increased. Correct?
DC to cloud provider. Yes, and that's why basically these things becomes tricky. The internet part, right? Because you cannot guarantee the internet bandwidth, and that's why people are considering some other options, which are the primary focus of this session. Don't worry, we will be discussing all those things in upcoming sessions. Those are very interesting things. Yeah, but the question is right. Yeah.
And from Sandeep, will there be delay accessing the services hosted in cloud as internet traffic in DC would be more faster?
No, actually, it's up to you how you have designed your network. But if you believe me, you are right now using, for example, this thing which I'm using, whiteboard. This is hosted into the cloud, right? And then the email services and everything, whatever you are using, is hosted into the cloud. Previously, when we were or we were changing gear from on-prem to cloud, there were some problems in accessing that cloud 360 and all Outlook email. But now, if you can see that basically the communication is really faster. So although email doesn't come under this infrastructure as a service, so it is a software as a service. Like Gmail also is a software as a service, right? You do not need to install anything; everything is managed by them. But here, the most important part is infrastructure as a service, because if there is an infrastructure of VM, you need to have network.
And that's one more.
Okay, so one thing I would like to tell you guys. Tomorrow we are going to discuss networking, basically how networking at a server level works. We will introduce vSwitch or distributed switch also there, and then we'll try to understand from cloud networking perspective that how these guys are doing this networking. Okay, it's going to be interesting session tomorrow. Once again, but if the basics are solid, then basically we can build anything on top of it. So with that, thank you so much, everybody joining this call. See you tomorrow.